Hey everybody, it's Keith Salmon here. I am the founder and CEO of Keith Salmon Coaching, the home of the Million Dollar Story Method. This is a continuing series called The Million Dollar Stories. I believe that everyone's got a $1 million story. It's just a matter of what you want to do with it. Tonight, I have the privilege and honor to have a very special guest. His name is Dr. Peter Weller. Many of you remember him as the original RoboCop. He's got an unbelievable storied career that he's going to share with us tonight. And that's what I have, the type of person that I have on this show is to help inspire up-and-coming entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are trying to make a change and grow whatever it is you're looking for. So these are stories of inspiration, they're stories of adaptation, they're stories of survival, and they are stories, like I said, just to inspire someone to say, yes, I can, instead of that's for someone else. So I hope you enjoy it. We cover a lot of ground, and I really enjoyed speaking with him. And thank you once again, Peter, for taking the time. And he's doing this for you. He's doing this to inspire you to pursue your dreams. And that's what I do with the $1 Million Story Method. It's all about pursuing their dreams instead of saying, oh, that's for someone else. That's for someone with money. No, this is for everyone. Everyone is entitled to pursue their dreams, and everyone's entitled to have their voice be heard. So without further ado, let's just get into the interview, and I am really proud to present this to you tonight. So thanks so much for watching, and please enjoy it. I have the honor and privilege to have a very special guest today. His name is Dr. Peter Weller. Hello, Peter.
Hey, Keith.
Really, really special to have you on board today.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
So basically, the reason that I know you as a friend and as a professional, and I think that you've got one hell of a story. You've got an incredible story of versatility, a story of survival, a story of creativity and adaptation, and then in your spare time, you're a doctor of Italian Renaissance art history, which is completely way over my head. So that that tells me that your story inspires. You inspire me, and if you don't mind, I'm going to share just one little thing to the audience to know, put this into perspective. I was editing a project for an independent film that I knew that Peter was starring in. He did the role, and Peter, thank you for that experience. And Peter had, I knew Peter as an actor before I met him when he came into the edit room, which I was editing the film. It was a difficult project, but it was because it was so simple in a way. So Peter came in, and within 5 seconds, I knew that he was like a master of the film craft, and behind the camera, unbelievably impressive. But what was really, struck me as a human being is that this is back in the day when in our editorial post-production companies, we had to have cappuccino makers. That was the thing. If you didn't have a cappuccino maker, you didn't know, you weren't doing anything. The problem is that nobody in our office, we had like 17 people working there, knew how to work the cappuccino maker. And Peter said, in a break, he says, I'll take care of this. And it might have been expressed. So we walked there, and I said, this is my kind of man. He's creative, and he knows so much more about coffee than I'll ever know in my entire life. So I just want to say that it's a human side of a connection that attracts me to people and their human stories. So your story of your career is just incredible.
Well, I've forgotten about that cappuccino moment, and I remember it as soon as you started describing it. I remember it clearly because it was a pretty good, intermediate machine for offices and so forth, and it took some doing. And I remember it because I'm a cappuccino nut, and I live essentially in the area part-time in Italy where cappuccinos were invented, and I remember doing that machine because, look, man, I have a really expensive, all plumbed into the water machine here. My house in LA, I have virtually the same machine, although much older. It's a bar machine. It's a serious professional machine in Italy. And the people who maintain my house, the painters and so forth, electricians, whatever. It's a very small house, but it's a beautiful place. They would not, and they're Neapolitans, man. These Neapolitans have like I don't know, close to 8 or 10 espressos a day. And you got to know that espresso has less caffeine than drip coffee because the longer the water drips through the coffee, the more drug. You've shoved water through it really quick. Most people don't realize that. They think that espresso is much stronger, but it has a richer taste, but it's much less, much less caffeine. But anyway, it was years, Keith, before the locals would allow me to make them a coffee. Yes, because I'm such a like a boring Northern European white guy. You know, they'd come in, they'd do some work, they'd look at the machine, they go, "Oh, look, yeah, you got like a chimney, blah blah blah." Yeah, I said, you know, the rest of the cafe, you want a coffee? And they go, "Nah," you know. Then they would never let me. You know, they were never going to let me pull them a coffee. And then finally, I think after 3 or 4 years, I think Marcello, the electrician, finally said, "Okay, I'll try one." But you know, the Italians are obsessive coffee people, man, and I learned my whole coffee route through them. But the Italians are obsessive with everything, including film. And I've learned more, I think, through the culture of Italy than I've learned through any culture at all in the United States.
Now, you've got a home in the Amalfi Coast, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I bought a small place there close to 30 years ago when it was chump change. Now it's so expensive I couldn't get in. It's one of those places, you know. You got a cute place in like the Palisades. You're in. You try to
Right,
get into the Palisades now, man. You're cooked. So you got to be like a millennial billionaire.
right. So you're very comfortable in front of the camera, quite obviously, but I think that a lot of folks uh, don't know how talented you are from behind the camera. And working on shows like Sons of Anarchy and Hawaii Five O and things like that. How had you? When did you start doing directing? From transitioning from act? I mean, you're still acting, obviously, but when was your first desire to follow that path?
Well, I was acting since I was 10. A really great man who deserves a shout out who passed away. This guy, Robert Yanni, was happened to be stationed in the military with my father he was the guy who created the Mickey Mouse Club. He was the P.T. Barnum for Disney in the 50s. He created the Mickey Mouse Club. He expanded the idea of like networking with kids. He's the guy that incepted Disney World in the East. He revamped the Radio City Music Hall when they're going to shut it down. To turn it into a movie theater and a presentational theater, and not just the Rockettes and so forth. He reinstated the Rose Bowl parade. He was a major producer of events for Disney, and a very successful cat. And his wife was rather rich. I mean, she was all tied into John Paul Getty's oil companies and so forth. But that said, Robert Yanni put me on the stage when I was 10 because he was just happened to be stationed where my father was a helicopter pilot. And I kind of fell in love with acting through that. I never really wanted to be an actor. And I wanted to be Miles Davis, as a matter of fact. And I went to a great music school in North Texas and realized I wasn't going to be Miles Davis. It's kind of, you see Whiplash, that's my story. That's a lot of jazzers stories, It's like really hard to go to competitive contemporary music school. Weller, Major 49, 3, 4, 5. Okay, get off the stage. The next brutal. And I wasn't going to be Miles Davis. And so then I decided, well, the only thing I knew how to do to stay out of Vietnam was be an actor. But I got to tell you this honestly, when I was doing theater in college, I directed a play. I directed 27 Wagons Full of Cotton, Tennessee Williams short play. And I wanted to be a director then, except the directing was not going to get me to New York. It was not going to get me into an acting school. It was not going to get me moving into the network of theater and film. I didn't want to go to another school. I didn't want to. I wanted to hit the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and start working, and that's what I did. But so there's a long-winded way of saying that in the back of my head, I've always preferred telling the story than performing in the story. And I've always been more obsessed with like how directors. I mean, even as a kid, man, I'm looking at like. Yeah, okay. My wife and kid are going, yeah, they're going for a walk. even when I was a kid, I was looking at movies like Ben-Hur, which I saw. I was living in Germany at the time. I saw Ben-Hur and thinking, William Wyler's version of it. This massive 18 mil shot of Sam Jaffe and Charlton Heston walking down off the opening of that chariot, right? And it like dollies back to reveal all 10, 4-horse chariots, man. And I thought, wow, how do they do that? So I was much more interested in that than performance. So it's just a natural step. And then when I got to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, I begged them to let me direct Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which I did with a wonderful character actor, Graham Beckel, who's my buddy, my first and real buddy in New York. Always wanted to do it, Keith, but no opportunities until essentially Showtime and Paramount gave me the opportunity to make a short film. And then after that, Barry Levinson and Tom Fontana hired me for television for Homicide. And then I never looked back, and if that's all I had to do is direct television or direct something, I would do it.
Right.
Now, I got to tell you something, honestly, we all got to make a buck and we all got to feed our families and so forth. I know a director, really, really good television director, who has millions from an estate. That's okay. I don't begrudge him that because he works like a dog. But he complains about the low money that directors get, in television. Now, as far as the world is concerned, we get good money if you're bouncing it off whatever the world's paycheck is.
Right.
But if you're looking at like what you think you ought to be paid for the hours you put in, it's never going to be the same thing.
Right.
Unless Picasso made, Picasso doesn't know that these paintings are being resold for $80, $150 million.
Right.
He's probably rolling in his grave, right? So my point is that if you're totally in it for the loot, which a lot of people get into it for, it's a bust, because you got to be in it for the passion. There's a thing in Sanskrit, man, I read when I was 18. It made no sense to me. I kept it around. A guy reminded me of it when I was 30. First law of prosperity, find out what you really want to do and do that. It doesn't say jack about money, rewards, fame, notoriety, whatever.
Right.
Find out what you really want to do and do that. Find out what you really want to do and do that. And I did. And I was fortunate to scramble the opportunities, but nothing was ever handed me in a silver platter, man. Nobody ever came up to me and go, hey, here you go. You could be the star of the movie. Hey, you can star in this play, man. I felt like I had to dig and work past all sorts of negative vibes. You'll never make it. Then New York will kill you. Oh, that play will tank. They don't want you for that movie.
Right.
Man, CBS ain't hiring. God, if you listen to the negative vibes out there, man, who the hell would get out of bed?
Yeah.
I mean, who would get out of bed?
Right. I mean, those stories are, there's show business and there's movie making and there's, all kinds of industries and people and regular people. And they all have those things where people say that you can't do that. You can't do that. And if your priorities and your passion is blocked by, I think about goals, goals and money is not necessarily a healthy way to look at a goal. Money might come with if you follow a passion, you can kind of participate in changing the world somehow. Those things will follow, but follow the dream.
Yeah, follow the dream. It's interesting you say that also, because I got out of bed today, and I had a little heat exhaustion yesterday because I went to play golf. And I are both golfers, but it was just 100 degrees outside, man. It was like I was pushing a cart around. I didn't have enough sleep. I had about 5 hours sleep. And when I came back, I did some work, and then I crashed at about 8 o'clock and slept for 10 hours, man. It was a great 10 hours. But when I woke up, because at this point in time, I'm negotiating to go back to work to direct, and whenever that's going to be, hopefully soon, maybe possibly for me in October. But in the meantime, I've got a window here to turn my dissertation, my PhD dissertation, into a book. And you got to go through it and really take out all the academic dissertation jazz out of it, the scholastic stuff, and make it look and sound like a book. Because I've got through the first step of the editing with Cambridge University Press, which is a big high roller. So I'm really honored to be with them, and I've got to send in this thing. So it's an opportunity to get out. But I woke up today, Keith, with all of the things, a list of things in my head in my life that I have not gotten done. That have not gotten done. It was that great idea for a screenplay, with Showtime that I was talked out of. I know no one's going to go for that, man. That this thing over here, this television series thing, and there's disappointment in everybody's life. That there's like it's baseball pitching, look at the career pitching, or it's like, I guess, football throwing or golf winning or anything in sports. I think like, wow, Randy Johnson, he's one of the greatest pitchers ever. Then you look at the win-loss thing, and you think like, God, I didn't know he lost that many games. Well, he won more than he lost, right?
Right.
And he lost. There's disappointment in there, man.
Right.
I'm looking at that Super Bowl between Pittsburgh and Dallas the other day, 1979, where that guy, I think his name is Jake Smith, drops the pass. Perfect. Drops it, man. Dallas could have won it. There's disappointment. So I woke up today with like a shield of all of the stuff that I've not gotten done. And I said, man, I better take contrary action here and get to work.
Right.
Because anybody can go down the rabbit hole of like, and you think like sometimes like my heroes, like, what is it that, well, I mean, that couldn't have happened to Miles Davis. Yeah, it did. That couldn't happen to Al Pacino. Yeah, it did. As a matter of fact, I was 27 years old doing a hit play with Mike Nichols, my mentor. And Al's like a buddy of mine. Al's actually got me hired a couple times, but a great dude and a talent. And I was sitting with him at a party. I was 27. I think he's 34 at the time. And I said, he says, what are you going to do after this? I said, I'm going to throw myself back into the world of rejection, which is that the play's going to end and I'm going to be out there on the street. And he said, that's never going to end. And this is Al Godfather, man, Serpico,
right.
Dog Day Afternoon. I go, well, it certainly ended for you. And he goes, and Al said, no, it doesn't end for me. He says, I just pitched a movie. I think it was him and Daniel Petrie pitched a movie that was rejected. They go, no, we're not going to do that. So I thought, really? Al Pacino, top of his game, pitches a movie and is rejected? So there's like, boy, the thick skin you got to have just to bounce through the world.
Right.
And the hardest one is being a parent. You're a dad, so that's the hardest one. I think
a lot of rejection in that world, right?
Oh gosh, oh my gosh, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm doing these. I'm teaching story. I'm having people talk about their stories in an ordinary business environment, and I think it's a powerful way to connect. It is the powerful way to connect and build the trust that you want to have with somebody you're going to work with. And so when we go back and we start looking at our life, you just laid it out there. All these Randy Johnson comparisons, all these things that didn't pan out. But I don't like people to dwell there, because you look at, like you said, he won more than he lost. And if you look in terms of baseball terminology, that's all you need to do, because you need to win one more than you lost, and you're a winner.
That's right.
And to take credit for those assets, because that's what you have to draw on. You've got to draw on the assets that worked, because something had to have worked. It's not all negative, and sometimes it's hard not to sit in that negative stuff and get stuck. And a lot of people in transition is if you're lucky enough to live long enough, you're going to have some of those transitions in your life. If you did one thing your whole life, you wouldn't be able to sustain it.
Yes. It's funny you say that. That's really amazing that you say that about the one thing about the transitions. My deal, like you said, is Italian Renaissance art history, and you look at Michelangelo. Michelangelo is maybe the most famous artist ever, and he literally finished like 8 things. That's it. And he started and didn't complete a lot of things, and he transitioned into this, he transitioned into that. He finally found a métier of like taking torsion and twisting it. For my money, is like almost like the insemination of the art of the action movie, and he got that from classical Greece and Pergamum. But the things that he started and didn't do, and said, no, I'm not going to. No, they're not going to pay me. No, I'm not interested in this anymore. Now I've got to move over here. It's remarkable that you could look at it like, okay, is he a failed artist because he did not complete this stuff, that we have remnants of all this stuff, or is he a guy who just could move with the times? Just like would go like, okay, the guy's not going to finish the contract. I'm moving on to something else. I'm going to do this thing over here.
Right.
He did. There's two ways of looking at that. Is he really adaptable and movable? I think he is. I think he's more that than like the curmudgeon who goes, heck with it. I'm tired of this. I don't know. It's like astounding to look at his work and think that the most famous, the David is essentially based on ethos, the idea of classical sculpture from Greece, man. And there's David in a tense moment before he's going to throw the stone. And then he does the Sistine Chapel, and we know him from the David in the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And most people don't know Michelangelo past that. But
Right.
Those two things are 2 of the 8 things he finished. But I tell you, man, they're home runs. They're like Babe Ruth.
Right. It's like one-hit wonders. People don't know how hard it's a 25-year overnight sensation. People only visualize. I was actually talking to someone before. It's like in history, like the old folk singers, American folk singers. One of the things that happens with our, say, Woody Guthrie, for example. We have, as children, grew up singing, something like "This land is your land, this land is my land." It's
right.
And we sing a version that he may have performed once, but he was like a guy who didn't really perform the song twice.
Ever.
And so it's how it got recorded is how we, "Love Me Tender" and Elvis in that movie, and it's things like that, and those. It's a version of storytelling, and if there's a snapshot of that moment in time, like Michelangelo, that's what was that is a time capsule of some sort. And so all of our stories and the caveman drawings and songs and literature and everything like that, they're time capsules to preserve for mankind. It's an interesting way to think of. And all of our lives have that woven into our existence and what our legacy leaves, and not to get too kind of crazy deep about it.
But the most interesting thing about the time capsules are, and it's never more true than when you look at film and visual art, is I used to, when I was a novice at it, and I still am, I guess, I used to separate these time capsules.
Right.
I never realized their connection, that it's an ongoing kinesthetic idea of knowledge, that like if like what that you could look at Piet Mondrian or Rothko, and you can go back. I can take you back in 3 seconds, 30 seconds, back to Michelangelo. And if you want to go from Michelangelo, I could take you all the way back to ancient Greece. And it's not me, but if somebody takes you by the hand, instead of separating these time capsules, as you so succinctly put it, that there's a connection and an evolution from this one time capsule to the next. And I never understood that, Keith, until I got into looking at visual art. You know, Ally McGraw, the great and beautiful Ally McGraw, man, a movie star in her own right. But before that, I mean, a stylist for Diana Vreeland at Vogue, and that's how she her cachet as and her friendship with me introduced me to tons of painters, writers, the glitterata of New York, and she was the one who took me by the hand and put me into Picasso. And I went, I don't want to look at curly stuff and curlicues and whatever. And she goes, no, this is the Guernica is going back. This is in 1980, 81. Guernica's going back to Spain, and I want you to know this stuff, you know. And you get to see Picasso's figurative realism, like real bookcases with real people. Beautiful, man. Moving into, he's influenced by Impressionism, abstract Impressionism, man.
Right.
You know, edging. It takes the image, you know, cubism, the image itself. Now, heck with the image itself jumping out of a frame. Let's just take the shape of the image and abstract the shape. And then you get Mondrian, you know, I go, golly, I now I kind of get it that Rothko has a theme with these squares. I want to go back and see where all this originated. And then, but the sad news is you get back to the Renaissance and it's not about art anymore. It's about, you know, politics and war and economics and blah, 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 blah. It's got to have some teaching. But I'm looking at movies, what you do and I do, and I say, like, okay, that William Wyler shot in Ben-Hur, where did he get that? Well, he was looking at, you know, D.W. Griffith and everybody else, man.
Right.
You know, and those guys were looking at painting. And you know, I all of a sudden I'm standing in front of this massive fresco Sir Lancelot in Mantua. And I think that's William Wyler, man. It's like the whole thing. You got the horses and the things and the guys. So all of this idea of visual storytelling in these separate time capsules actually has a fluidity and a kinesthetic connection. I didn't get that, man, until I started looking at painting. I did not understand it.
It comes from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere. Yes.
Yeah. The idea that there's a absolutely original idea is, I mean, there are some, but there's not many.
Well, yeah, that there's well, especially a visual idea. Is there an absolute visual idea? I mean, you brought up the caves of Lascaux. Look at the buffalo they're painting there, man.
Right.
And that's what is that? 8,000 years ago, man. You know, like, holy cow, man. We think we invented this.
Right.
You know, some kid at NYU Film School thinks he's inventing the cool shot here. Man, I don't know.
Well, Peter, you've told me, you know, I evolved from, you know, becoming, you know, from an editor, film editor for a long time. And then the human story is obviously where I come from, if you know me. And when I started to do some shooting and some filming and directing, like mostly real people, try and get the real stories out. And I'd always share with Peter, to the audience, I would share Peter what I was doing, and just because it was newer to me. I knew what composition was. I was pretty well studied, and I mean, I completely understood what I was looking for. And you know, we would talk about what camera we're using, and it wasn't about which exact camera it was, because you said to me, it's like, never let the technology get in the way of your storytelling. And it's really stuck with me, because it's just, you know, it's just a medium. It's going to change next year. It's going to change in 5 years how we're doing things, but the story is the thing that survives all this stuff, you know.
Yeah. Well, I just want look, Keith.
Yeah.
That's not my. When I said that, I was quoting. I was ripping off Elia Kazan, and for what anybody thinks politically, Elia Kazan, he is the granddaddy of American naturalism, as far as I'm concerned, man. And he certainly put some of the greatest performances in movies on the screen, not to mention plays. But Elia Kazan brought me into the Actors Studio, and because of whatever the bugaboo was between Strasberg and Kazan essentially ran the director's unit. And then he would take over the actors unit if Lee wasn't around, or Ellen Burstyn or somebody was around. But some of the stuff that would come out of Kazan's mouth, Kazan and some directors unit said, you know, this is in New York and it's basically theater, but he's talking about movies, and he said, somebody was talking about focal length or something like that. And he was small, like a cannonball, though, and he had energy like a firecracker, man. And he said, a movie is not in, uh, you know, uh, f-stops, focal lengths, and camera positions. Those are only supportive technique of the performance of written material. The performance of written material, and yeah, it's a visual medium, but a great movie still lies in the performance of written material. And I'm 27 years old. What does that mean to me? Yes, I kind of want to direct, but more or less I'm enthralled with my identity as a method actor and a theater actor. But it stayed with me, man. It stayed with me. And then when you direct, you start thinking, okay, that's a cool shot. That's a cool shot. But is that cool shot supporting the story here of the guy who wants revenge, against the dude who took his girlfriend away? Is that the shot that's going to tell that story? And to this day, Keith, I'm still acting, and I meet a couple directors who are like, I just worked with a guy who I've directed back to back with, and he's an amazing director, but he was falling in love with shots that had nothing to do with the story.
Oh, it's got to be story driven. It's got to add to it. Um, I got myself like almost unpopular for sticking with that premise,
Oh, really?
in editing. I mean, there's a little era there where I might lose a gig because, well, he's a storyteller. He wouldn't be able to do this flashy stuff. Well, I would disagree with that, but I kept my storytelling banner fluid high throughout everything, and I don't know. I just wanted to remind. That reminds me every time I talk to you. I remember that you quoted that to me, and it was just I couldn't agree more. But it was really a supportive thing for you to tell me. It's like because the story, even the simplest thing, if I'm going to walk into the kitchen or go to there's a story involved with that. It's not shots. It's just not visual without connection, and that's where even one shot, if you connect a shot, it has to have a meaning and a connection point. It's interesting. I talk to people when they, the kind of this area that I'm coming into with teaching, people about launching their businesses and telling their stories and things like that. I go back to when it was an editing story, but I remembered I worked on this film. It was a music video, Billy Joel music video. It was the first time I'd ever really heard anyone refer to the person, the artist, as the product, and they called him the product. And so it's sort of like in this industry of,
wait a minute, who was calling him the product?
The record company.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was interesting because that's what the labels would refer to them as, the product, and I get that. It's helpful when I talk to people about, if they're telling your own story, your story is your product. You are the product, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to sell you this box of this converter box or something like that. But maybe that's a bad example. But it's the personality of the connection is if you think that you're the product, then you work on your product a little bit more. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's like a world of like, wow. Yeah, I wonder where. I don't know.
Well, I guess what
all
I'm
thinking,
saying.
all I'm thinking is, speaking of Kazan, have you ever seen A Face in the Crowd?
I have not. No.
Well, it's a brilliant movie, and you should see it. It's the first movie about the idea of corporate identity taking over an idiom. In this case, it's religious preaching, way out of its time, Keith. It started Andy Griffith's career. Patricia Neal's nominated for an Oscar in it. And it's Kazan once again seizing in the 50s a social epidemic of like tent revivalists, and how America as a corporation seizes that as a product. And if I took A Face in the Crowd and La Dolce Vita, Fellini's La Dolce Vita, and maybe Sidney Lumet's what's that great movie about media? with Faye Dunaway and William Holden, and what is an amazing movie. If I took those three movies about product, what is the name of that film? It won the Oscar.
I'm drawing a blank. Drawing a blank.
You are? You should know this you should know this film. We're going to do it right now. I'm going to tell you right now. American director. Here he is. Okay, Sidney Lumet. Okay. Yeah. Sidney Lumet. It won the Oscar. Prince of the City, not Prince of the City, not The Verdict, not Dog Day Afternoon, 12 Angry Men. God, he won 4 Academy Awards, really? Yes, he was born one day after me, and the name of the movie is Network.
Network.
Network. Right.
That was going to be an early guess, but I didn't want to make a mistake there. So
okay. So if you see Network facing the crowd and La Dolce Vita, that's it. Network's about 10 years later, but those are the exceptions of like when it was fortuitously director-writers said, wow, Big Gov, Big Biz, I mean, forget Big Pharma, is going to seize, right, a thing, a person, a performer, a thought, and make it the product. But when you're telling me that they were actually referring to Billy Joel as the product, or they were, is that true?
Yes.
My God.
I think it's just record company speak. That it's
yeah, but when is that? Is that in the 80s or 90s? When is that?
It was the late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not like they weren't. I don't want to say that they weren't referring to him as Billy Joel. They were giving him a personal, but it was like, I mean, the percentage of the product is something that they talk about.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily that they were saying that it was totally dystopian and Orwellian, and the personality out of it, but the very fact that corporately they were referring to the thing that paid their paycheck, as the product. I mean, the theme of the depersonalization of communication, the depersonalization of communication, is the theme, in the face of money, and internet connection or future is the theme of A Face in the Crowd and La Dolce Vita. Those probably two of the most powerful movies I've ever seen. And Network, I'm pissed off and I'm not going to take it anymore. I want everybody to go out their house and yell at, because this guy loses his mind. That essentially, the networking of Big Gov, Big Biz is essentially depersonalized us. Right. You want to see another brilliant movie about the depersonalization of corporate identity, which is really what this movie's about. In spite of the fact that it's a great action movie, it's truly about identity theft. See RoboCop. I mean, and it took like years for me to see that Verhoeven. I talked with Verhoeven for years after all these 25th year anniversaries and so forth. Years to see that this guy had a master's degree in mythology, in medieval mythology, Verhoeven, and in spite of the fact that Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner had written it, whether at UCLA, by the way, right next door to where I live now, and they had this like young revolutionary vision of like, for the greater good, the corporation will take over, anything personal, but. It's only later, in the day of the internet and everything we're doing now, man, with media, that movie's prescient. That I see that movie as prescient. That movie is truly about what Verhoeven always said it's about. It's about identity theft and resurrection. Oh. That in the name of progress. I've had conversations with Verhoeven, man, about Facing the Crowd, about La Dolce Vita. These are some of his favorite movies. Because those movies are it's so far-seeing, man, that like the product, that, God, man, I'll tell you. You absolutely. You know, Matt, I'm going to go see Face in the Crowd again. I haven't seen it in 6 years. So I'm going to see it again. Right. The second I get off this thing, I'm going to get it.
That's awesome. So, I mean, do you mind telling us how the RoboCop role came about? I mean, what that process was like, and if you knew it was gonna, if it was, if you read the script and said, "I've got to do this," or how did that happen?
Well, I don't want, I never talk about the inner workings of the movie anymore. I just don't. But I will give you the context of it is that, um, the context of it is that I knew Verhoeven's films.
Mm,
And Verhoeven and I had a bump when we first started making the movie, and it's notoriously written down. We did have a bump. You know, he didn't trust me, I didn't trust him. But the movie wouldn't be the movie without Verhoeven. Verhoeven had so many things to say in that movie that if you gave it to the average, and I'm being nationalist, anti-nationalist here, if you gave it to the average action or even a great action director from the United States who is not infused with 500-600 years of medieval ideology and myth and change, it wouldn't have been the same thing because we are a young country with young vision. It's a great thing. But the original RoboCop is profound, profound. And, you know, Verhoeven made movies, small stories against huge operatic backdrops. Soldier of Orange, this little love story, World War II going on outside. You know, Spetter is a small thing about motorcycle, which is like the world motorcycle industry, you know, dirt bike industry. Fourth Man, uh, the guy's movies were really profound to me. And so when my agent and dear friend and my one and only agent at the time, until he left CAA, retired from CAA, Rick Nacita, called me and said, you know, this guy Verhoeven, I said, I love him. He's got this robot movie. He called it a robot movie. And I didn't know what it was, man. You know, there was no script on it. The script, he was just meeting.
right.
And I just went in and told him, I said, I know this is going to be a personal story against an opera. He said, why do you say that? I said, because that's all your movies are. And just, it wasn't flattery that got me in there, but
Mhm.
it's knowing what that guy wanted to say, I think got me in there. You
Right.
know, I think once he knew that I knew what he was about, uh, I think that's what did, and I never auditioned for him. Because I don't audition well. I don't read well. I don't, you know, but I am an athlete, and I started moving for him in a room once. But we had 4 or 5 meets, and I'll tell you this: that by that time I'd read it, and it was brilliant. And it wasn't as brilliant. It was good, really good, but it wasn't. He took that thing and he took a great script and transformed it into brilliance. Look, I'll give you a case in point, man. I bring this up again, you know. There's a scene where, you know, Nancy Allen sees me twirling a gun. She says, Murphy, it's you. Paul McCrane, these are still great friends of mine. Paul McCrane says, I know you, you know, after I bust him at a gas station and so forth. And then, you know, RoboCop starts having dreams. And Verhoeven wanted these dreams to happen first. He wanted him like RoboCop goes nuts. And I'm standing in my suite there at the Hyatt, and I go, I don't understand it. And he goes, no, 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 man. These are not dreams. This is not amnesia. This is what, you know, you would think it is, but it's not that. It's not that. You know, this is what it is. It's like it's the soul waking up. It's the soul waking up. And if you read Jung, which Verhoeven has read Jung, you know, the soul wakes up on its own. Because the soul is cosmic given, or God given, or, you know, infinite given. Am I losing you here? Because this is RoboCop, man.
No,
I did,
this is the layers.
yeah. And so I go, well, what? He says, yeah, man, it's got to wake up. It's the one thing they can't take, Peter. They can't take that. They can't take his soul. They cannot take his soul. And it has to wake up on its own. It's not amnesia. It's not like he sees and remembers. It's not that. It's the soul. And he's like going nuts in my suite, man. I'm thinking, this guy is out of his loot. But yeah. And now I see that, and I see that, I go, that's the film, man. That is the film. The film is about the product. But the one thing that they have no in on is his soul.
Right.
The rest of it's all product. And
Hmm.
this guy, out of his own waking up, looking for who he may be in a physical world, it's a sad friggin' movie, Keith.
Yeah.
It's sad, man.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it in a while, but Miguel Ferrer, bless his heart, passed away some years ago. And the ArcLight Egyptian asked me if I would come. They just on impromptu did a showing of it in a really great print, a new print. There were 240 people outside who couldn't get in. It was absolutely impromptu. I showed up with Ed Neumeyer. This is in 2000 and I want to say 16, 17, something like that. I showed up with Ed Neumeyer. I said, I'll go in here if you let all these people have standing room. They said for free. So they let them all in. It was packed. And Ed and I talked about the movie, and then we sat down. I was going to leave. And then Ed and I watched it. And it's a sad movie, man. It's sad. It is truly, 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 truly sad because it's a story of a journey of a guy who's never going to, the loss, the personal loss way outweighs the personal win. And yeah, the audience is going right on. It's Murphy. What's your name, son? It's Murphy.
Right.
But he ain't ever coming back, man. You
Yeah.
know, he ain't
Well,
ever coming back. But yeah,
it's
go ahead.
amazing that you understood it before you even read it. That's
Well, I understood Verhoeven.
right.
I didn't understand where he was going with it.
But I mean, just the idea that you guys could sync up with a vision like that, it seems like that's
Yeah,
a synchronicity moment there that even if you did have a bump here and there, whatever it was, but the idea that there's so many layers to that thing, you knew that right away. I love that story.
yeah. It's Verhoeven. I got to say, I got to say, just because you say this, as a matter of fact, it's ready now. It's the 25th anniversary of it. Uh, 25th anniversary, which was in 2012. That's 8 years ago at UCLA with all the cast, man, because those guys wrote it at UCLA. I stood up and got to say to this audience of cast and crew and critics and the LA Times and New York Times and there and so forth that in spite of the brilliance of Ed Neumeyer and Michael Miner, that, and I told them the story I just told you, that without Verhoeven really, really driving home this theme of in the name of progress, the theft of the person, the theft of the individual, and the resurrection of soul. Without that driving into there, I'd venture to say it would not be as long-lasting a movie as it is, because you get the action, you get the fun, you get the thrill, you get all of this, like the humor and all the stuff with Neumeyer. But what's working underneath you is this hooray. And he had this. He says, "I've had this for you a long time," and he gave me this picture of RoboCop that he'd signed this beautiful thing on it. That thank you for making my favorite film of all work for me. And I lost it. And I'd not known where it is, and I wonder where it is. And COVID, leave it to COVID. I'm cleaning out, Showing and I are cleaning out our we're trying to combine storage units, right?
Right.
I come by like these things I got to throw out, this movie memorabilia and stuff for the family and all this garbage, man. And I come by this stuff, and there's that picture, man. And I just found it like 3 weeks ago, and I just got a call yesterday that it's been framed and it's ready to go. So I don't know. And I got to put it on the wall here, man. I got to put it
Well,
on the
that's
wall.
one of your time capsules. You preserve that time capsule. Someday, 300 years from now, someone's going to find that and go, wow. They're going to try to
Yeah,
understand it.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's a great It's a great story. I think that what you've told me also is that it's collaborative. These sort of like things that are magic have magical collaboration, and that's really important for people to
Magical,
know.
collaboration, but I don't know. Wow, it's so serendipitous what makes a good movie or not. It's like jazz. It's like jazz. Like Duke Ellington, leave nothing to chance, and then you can leave everything to chance. And I don't know. Sometimes I see the operative, micromanaged, perfect-looking movie that's fantastic, but then I don't care to see it again. I'm amazed when I see it, and I go, "Okay, I'm done with that." But I'm not going to go look at it again like I'm going to go look at like Best Years of Our Lives or Ben-Hur or or Network or but like for instance, I have to say that like 1917, what a journey and how brilliant that is. And Deacon's Diary, all of it. But it's a one and done for me. I'm not going to do 1917 again.
Right, right.
Well, why? Okay, but I will do E.T. again. I'll do that again and again and again. Um, I don't know. I'll do Close Encounters again. There's a couple Spielberg movies. There's a couple Spielberg movies I won't. My kid watches Jurassic Park over and over again. But what is it that you see a movie that's absolutely fantastic, but you ain't got no second role with it?
Right.
You got any of those?
Well, I think that generational thing, it's like even as sort of like soft feeling and blubbering it can get as like Field of Dreams is one of those things where if you take your son to it, if I took my son to it, you'd have moments. You'd have moments where you pass things generationally. E.T. is the same sort of thing. You just
Yeah.
it's like the Beatles. Generations come and they learn about the Beatles, and it's like that because that it's been preserved well enough that a new generation come on and say that's something new, and then you can share it with the generation you pass it on, you pass it through.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Name a movie like that other than Field of Dreams.
Well, I mean, honestly, the Ten Commandments is one in our family anyway. It's like it's crazy visual. The stories are as an adult, it's interesting to look at Edward G. Robinson in there and just doing all that stuff. But the incredible technique of visualization and the narrative is quite astounding to me. And to look at it as an adult, everything kind of changes, but it still brings me through that. I mean, that's just something that's just, I don't know why that popped in. Maybe it was because we were talking about Ben-Hur before, but that's that sort of epic thing that you would see on a Sunday night before Passover or Easter or something like that. And it was such an epic that they'd have to play it over 2 nights.
Yeah. The Ten Commandments. I mean, I saw the end of the Ten Commandments, I guess last Easter or something. Yeah, it's a stunner.
I mean, but like Jaws is one of those that it never loses it could be today, even though some of the technique is a little bit different, but it's those kind of things. I mean, I think I'm a simple person when it comes to film and film history. I mean, I love I love a narrative. I love a story. I love to be emotionally messed around. I mean, I think it was Dr. Dolittle, Eddie Murphy's version of Dr. Dolittle. I think
love it.
It was like, I have to say, like my son, he was like 4 or 5 years old, and he had a real problem with noises, and it's kind of really something that I have. And we were chased out of the theater because of the trailers. because they were too loud. And we ran out into the lobby, and we finally just kind of got in there for the beginning of it. And when the raccoon started talking, everything was great. Everything was great. So it's just one of those things that it's not a classic. It's not anything to do with anything, but I was entertained. And if I go into the theater, which I hope stays in the world, going to the theater for me,
Yeah.
I could see it. I could see even a terrible, quote unquote, terrible movie, but the idea that those people, I know what the kind of work, even to make something that just gets into the theater, it's a colossal amount of work and effort to get that in there. So I respect it. It's like seeing a guitar player at a coffee house. I go, that guy's so much better than me. that I respect it. And in the filmmaking, I know what it's like to take a movie and take anything and put it into a theater. So I'm kind of biased to the underdog, let's just say.
Well, Dr. Doodle, we just watched that the other night. We watched The Burbs the other night. The Burbs is like fun, and I don't know. There's a litany of movies, but the paradox I'm pointing at is that like the spectacular versus what you can see again. Now, for instance, there's a list, the worldwide wire service critics list, I guess, of 2000 of the A-list most frightening films. But A-list, they're all not like Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever, or Hacker movies, but the A-list of the most frightening movies made. Okay. Of the 5 top, and I agree, there's not one of them that I really want to watch again because they are so frightening.
Right.
And number 1 is The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Okay. Not the recut of it and so forth. Now, Billy Friedkin is a mentor to me and a friend, and he's not doing well. I hope he's doing better right now. But that film, I can't see again. I can't go through that harangue. And my kid wants to see it.
Right.
I said, yeah, and he imitates what he thinks the voices and all that. But okay, number 2 is Psycho. I have no desire to see Psycho again, man. Call me a wimp. The Birds. When's the last time you saw The Birds, Keith?
It's a long time.
Well, it's scary, man. I saw a piece of The Birds about a year ago on TMC. It is really, it's gifted and scary. And then The Shining. I don't want to see The Shining again. And I don't want to see Omen again. I don't want to see Rosemary's Babies again. Right. I don't want to see the original Alien. It scares the hell out of me, man. I think Jaws is on there. I do want to see Jaws again. I kind of want to see Jaws with my kid.
I saw Jaws. I saw Jaws at the Cinerama Dome. Remember the Cinerama Dome?
Yeah.
That was like, there were a lot of screeches and screams in that. It was pretty fun. It's like a roller coaster ride, and there's no like, I'm not leaving any part of my heart in that movie theater. I can come out of there and I can feel like exhilarated from it, even though it's like crazy and scary and everything like that. But it's sort of heroic when you get out of there.
But there is you're right. There's amazing catharsis after there, man. You feel high as a kite, like, Richard Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider winning. And then there's another one on there called Don't Look Now. You ever seen Nick Rogue's Don't Look Now?
I don't know that movie. Don't Look Now.
Oh, that'll scare you, man. It is shot in winter in Venice. It's with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie.
Oh, yeah. I did. I have seen that. I have seen that.
The little girl in red.
Yes.
Red,
yes.
yeah.
I didn't remember that. But that's spooky and scary.
Frightening. It's frightening, man.
Could I tell you a story about my dad? My dad didn't ever want to go to the movie theaters, and we didn't really understand why. He saw a film called Straight Jacket. Did you ever see that film?
Sure.
So it was with Joan Crawford, right? and I think,
Straight, yeah.
and it was, my dad saw that film, and he didn't see another film in the theaters until, I got it. This is the funniest thing, is that he went to see Caddyshack because it was the thing where he wasn't going to leave anything in the theater, except he decided that it was, if I'm going to go to the theater, I'm going to laugh. And it was like quite a bookend of a hiatus from going to the movie theaters. And then I never really understood. And then when I saw Straight Jacket as an adult, I went, yeah, this is still pretty scary. It's a really, really simply filmed, but the tension and the irony and the, just the characters and just the graphic shadows of people being beheaded and things like that. It was. I can see what my dad was talking about. And then, to come out of his slump to come in a Caddyshack was just awesome. Then we could go to the movies with my dad again.
I saw Straight Jacket. It came out right after William Castle. That's what the guy I want to remember. Yes. This guy, William Castle, was a wannabe Hitchcock and almost looked like Hitchcock. Yeah. All I remember is Straight Jacket is that there was a lot of the heads rolling, and that Diane Baker was really mean. The daughter was really
right.
That everything's the mother is. So your dad sees that, he goes from that, then there's a hiatus, and then it's Caddyshack. That's funny.
Well, I just love it. It was a kind of a family story, but it was like, do you want to go to the, you want to go to the movies? No, I'm not going. But it just, it struck something with him, and it's like a young George Kennedy was in that film. He was the chicken. He was cutting off chicken heads. It was like all this stuff. You couldn't get away from the heads coming off at that movie.
Listen, I got to run.
Oh man, it's time to go. Well, Peter, you I call this $1 million story series, and you've got more than one, I have to say. So thank you so much.
Hey Keith, it's a pleasure to hang with you, to talk with you, and I wish we could play golf again soon.
We'll do it soon, but I'm on a mission here, and your story is going to inspire some people, and that's my mission right now, and we'll get out on the golf course one of these days soon.
I'll tell you this only because I got to cut it short. If you want to do a part 2 to this, let me know.
Okay, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. Well, Peter, you're the man. You're my hero. We will talk to you real soon, and thanks one more time. Thanks for coming on. All right, Peter. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Keith. Bye.
Bye. All right. My thanks to Peter Weller for joining us today on $1 Million Stories. I want to remind you to please join our Facebook group, $1 Million Story Ninjas, where I will go through a lot of free training, a lot of discussion about story, personal story, how we tap into our personal stories and launch our business, get out of fear, create an audience, and create a belief system in ourselves that we can do anything we set our minds to. And our stories are the thing that connects us to our next client. So $1 Million Story Ninjas, please join us there. And once again, thank you, Peter.